Okay, good afternoon, everyone. As many of you know, I'm Fran Conway, Chancellor-Provost of Rutgers University, New Brunswick, and I'm pleased to welcome you to the inaugural Chancellor-Provost Mental Health and Wellness Lecture, which today will be delivered by Dr. Rizvi, Professor of Clinical Psychology at our Graduate School of Applied and Professional Psychology. Now, Dr. Rizvi's lecture on skills for achieving emotional wellness is a cornerstone of Rutgers New Brunswick's Mental Health and Wellness Week, part of my initiative to establish a culture of wellness across our campus community. Now, wellness is not only a job for our mental health supporters on campus, but it is a responsibility we must all take up to be kinder, gentler, more compassionate with ourselves and with others. Rutgers, New Brunswick is a beloved community where one quickly begins to feel like a member of the family despite our size. Now, the past 2 years have reminded us that our responsibilities to ourselves, our loved ones, and our communities must include looking after our own mental health and wellness. But you may be asking, how can we effectively manage our own wellness? To answer that question and help you find the methods and resources most useful and valuable to you, we have filled our Mental Health and Wellness Week with a variety of activities, substantive lectures and trainings, opportunities to explore mindfulness and creatively manage stress, reduce loneliness and isolation through meaningful interactions with each other. Please visit our website to learn more about these events and resources. Now, the purpose of this week is to remind us, students, faculty, and staff, of our own mental health needs, to call attention to the resources that we have, and encourage you to take time each day to care for ourselves. And to that end, I'm very proud to introduce Dr. Rizvi. Dr. Rizvi is a professor of clinical psychology at Gazette and also holds affiliate appointments in the psychology department at the RBHS School of Public Health and the Department of Psychiatry. Her research interests includes improving outcomes, training, and dissemination of dialectical behavioral therapy for the treatment of complex mental health problems. Her research has been funded by the National Institute of Mental Health, National Institute of Drug Abuse, and the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention, and has resulted in nearly 90 peer-reviewed articles, book chapters, and her sole authored book and a co-edited volume on dialectical behavior therapy. She is a board-certified behavioral and cognitive psychologist and certified in dialectical behavior therapy. She's nationally recognized for her work in these areas and has trained hundreds of students and participants from around the world. Now, during today's lecture, Dr. Rizvi will introduce practical skills such as mindfulness, emotion regulation, and distress tolerance that we can use to manage difficult emotions and stressful situations that will lead to success. As you listen to Dr. Rizvi, please make any comments or post questions using the chat feature. Dr. Rizvi, my pleasure to welcome you.
Thank you so much, Fran. It's delightful to be here. I feel really honored to have been asked to provide this inaugural lecture. And also, one of the reasons why I feel so honored is that this has been so consistent with my life's work, my career to date, which is that I want to get these skills out there in the world, locally, globally, and this is just a great opportunity to do that. So I really appreciate the invitation. And of course, I want to acknowledge Chancellor-Provost Conway and her team for inviting me, for setting this up, for providing support as I worked towards developing the talk today, as well as my team of postdocs, graduate students, undergraduates who work with me at what we call the DBT RU clinic and lab here at GZAP, who have been instrumental in everything that I do, including putting together some of the slides for today. So thanks to them as well. Now, Chancellor-Provost Conway already hit some of the key pieces about me, so I don't need to review any of this, but wanted to say, you know, on what authority do I have to come in here and say, I'm going to teach you skills for improving your own wellness? Well, I think she highlighted some of my background and the fact that I've been trained in certain types of treatments, and I provide training in certain types of treatments. I also direct here at GZAP the Dialectical Behavior Therapy Clinic at Rutgers. That's the DBTRU clinic, where I train graduate students in clinical psychology to deliver treatment. And we also have a clinic that's open to the community where we provide the treatment. And as part of this clinic, as part of my research, but also just as part of my life, I have spent the past 20 plus years dedicated to teaching these particular skills. Informally, I would say I've dedicated my life to cramming skills down people's throats because I just see the value in learning how to be more skillful and effective in one's life, no matter who you are, what your circumstances are, what your background is. These skills can be universally helpful, and I hope you think that's true as well. So here we are. You don't have to look very far to see news about the state of mental health, in the US. The consequences of the pandemic have likely added to mental health problems, but have also served to shine a spotlight on this area of mental health that I think has long been ignored. So we're seeing a lot of attention about mental health, and some of the news is quite dire. And people have been depressed, people have been anxious, people have been using substances for a long period of time, not just when the pandemic started. So I'm glad to see, although some of the headlines are so dire, I'm also glad to see increased attention to these problems. Now, among younger people, children, adolescents, college students, you know, the news seem even more dire. Just yesterday, the New York Times had a front page story. I think it said something like life or death, mental health crisis among US teens. So many of you who are watching are students. You have probably seen these headlines. Maybe you have experienced crises. Maybe you think that your own mental health is in crisis. That's okay. We're going to teach you some skills and then also provide you some resources. And the Chancellor-Provost Conway's team has put together an amazing set of resources that you have the link available to you as well. So it is easy to get overwhelmed, hopeless, and passive, especially when the news is so dire. And when perhaps we're experiencing so many crises or one bad event after another. It's important, I think, to remember that we always have choices, even when those choices are difficult. So when life presents you with problems, what are the options that are available to you? And actually, if you think about it, you can see that you always have more than one choice available to you. So what's our first choice? Well, our first option is that we can solve the problems. So for example, if we're feeling sad and lonely because our relationships are not what we'd like them to be, or we're feeling anxious about an upcoming exam or a work task, we can solve the problem. We can work steadily towards increasing the number of relationships that we have in our lives by joining more clubs, going out more often, etc. We could work on breaking down the work task or setting aside time to study to increase the likelihood that we would perform well at that task. So we could do direct problem solving with problems that we have. That's not our only choice, though. We could also say, well, these are problems that I have in my life. How do I change my emotional reaction to them? So is there a way in which I can say, well, the fact that I'm anxious about this upcoming exam or work task is because this clearly means something to me. And it's clearly representing something that I value. And so maybe it's not a bad thing. Maybe it's a good thing that I'm experiencing anxiety. So I can feel better about that. That requires some cognitive shifts, some new ways of thinking, but that is another option that's available to us when we have problems. Is that the only option? No, there's more. We can also work on accepting our problems. So this is maybe a more radical perspective, which is to say, I can radically accept the fact that actually my relationships are not what I want them to be right now. And I can accept that in this moment, because actually a lot of what causes suffering for us is when we don't accept, or when we add on by saying, and it's never going to change, it's going to stay this way forever. So if we just accept that right now, this is the situation exactly as it is, that sometimes actually alleviates a lot of our suffering. Then there's a fourth option. And this is one that I think we actually choose a lot of the time, even though it's not always in our best interest. And the fourth option is that sometimes we choose to stay miserable. And I say that as a person who has chosen this option myself in a number of different ways and for a number of different problems. But one of the reasons why I like to lay this all out and say that these are our options is for us to become more aware of actually how often are we choosing to solve problems, really try to tackle them and go after them, versus how often are we choosing to stay miserable and getting kind of caught up in that hopelessness and passiveness. And so what I'm going to teach you in this brief time that we have together are a few things that represent some of these other options other than staying miserable. And that way you can always come back and say, I have a choice. I'm going to choose to do something different here. So the skills that I'm going to be teaching are just a tiny subset of skills from a treatment called Dialectical Behavior Therapy. Some of you may have heard about this treatment. It's abbreviated DBT. DBT was developed by Dr. Marsha Linehan at the University of Washington. Dr. Linehan was my teacher and advisor, and one of the most important people in my life, hands down. The DBT skills is part of a comprehensive treatment program for people with complex mental health problems. So what I'm teaching you today, small subset of DBT skills, and DBT skills is just a subset of a larger treatment called DBT. And I just want to make that very clear, because of course, in 30 minutes, I am not doing the entire treatment. There's a lot more that's available if this is something that you're interested in, but just know that I'm kind of pulling out things that I think might be important and relevant, and there's more. So there have been a number of studies, including studies that we've done in my lab, to show that DBT skills can improve a range of mental health problems, including depression and anxiety. But of course, there's a lot more research that can be done on what skills help what people when, and that's all the sort of thing that I hope that I and other people will continue to work on, so that we can better identify what's going to be most helpful to people when they need it. So the 3 skills of the day that I'll be going through with you: mindfulness of current emotion, an emotion regulation skill called ABC Please, and a distress tolerance skill called TIP. So mindfulness. Now, I thought that it was really important that I do something related to mindfulness in this presentation. Mindfulness is considered core to dialectical behavior therapy, and it's considered, and it's found in almost every other skill, some element of mindfulness. And at the same time, I'm also aware that mindfulness is ubiquitous, that it's everywhere now, which is amazing. That wasn't always the case. But I say that because many of you who are listening right now may already practice mindfulness or have been to a mindfulness seminar or have taken part in one of the mindfulness minutes that are happening around campus. And that's wonderful. Some of you may have had very positive experiences with mindfulness, and others of you may have thought, oh, this is not for me, or it seems too religious or spiritual or something about that. So I want to kind of dispel some of these assumptions about what mindfulness is, but also do something a little bit different, maybe something that you haven't done before when you've experienced or been taught mindfulness. So you probably have heard a definition of mindfulness, and this is one that's used most often, or at least that I've heard most often, that's adapted from a man named Jon Kabat-Zinn, who defines mindfulness as paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally. So mindfulness, what's critical about mindfulness is being just in this one moment. And that if we are in just this one moment, we may find that even though this moment is filled with pain sometimes, that we don't suffer as much, because actually a lot of our suffering, a lot of our emotional stress and suffering is related to thoughts about something that is going to happen in the future, a worry thought or a planful thought about something that's happening in the future, or something that has happened in the past. And that actually, if we are just in this one moment, we can experience that moment exactly as it is, and we may find that our distress lowers. Okay. Now, the amazing thing about mindfulness, especially if you use this definition of mindfulness, is that it can be applied to any object of focus. And so traditionally, what you might hear about when you practice mindfulness is a mindfulness of the breath. And one of the great things about mindfulness of the breath is that you can do it anywhere, because for as long as you're alive, you'll have your breath with you. However, you could apply mindfulness to other experiences or sensations, that when you're studying for an exam, you could just study and just be fully mindful in that moment of the words on the screen that you're studying. If you're walking, you could focus on just walking. And if you're participating in a conversation, you can focus on just participating in that conversation. So any object of focus can be applied in the practice of mindfulness. And that includes objects of focus that we may experience as unpleasant or uncomfortable. Now, why would I say to practice being mindful of unpleasant or uncomfortable experiences? Is because actually, if we apply mindfulness to an unpleasant or distressing experience, we can actually learn a lot. One thing that we can learn is that we can handle it. We can experience it, and we won't fall apart. We won't die. We can also observe that actually, if we put our focus on an unpleasant experience, let's say an unpleasant or emotion or painful emotion, we can learn that the emotion may increase in intensity, may feel more painful, at least initially, but actually, if you stay with it, it will change. It will change. And if you stay with it for enough time, it will ebb. It will reduce in intensity. And so we call this mindfulness of emotion, or mindfulness of current emotion. It's like riding your emotion like a wave, as though you're surfing a wave, is that we can experience it. So what I want you to do, if you're listening, now I'm counting on you to be throwing yourself into the practice. So if you're listening right now, what I want you to do is just focus. How you practice mindfulness of current emotions is to actually pay attention to the sensations in your body. Now, some of you may be distressed right now. Some of you may not be distressed right now. It's okay, because you can practice this no matter how you're feeling, which is to just for a second, just for about 30 seconds, attend to the physical sensations in your body. Pressure, temperature, tension. Notice any thoughts that are going through your mind. And without doing anything to change them, just notice these sensations and thoughts. Another thing that you could do to add to your mindfulness practice is that as you're doing this mindfulness of your current emotions, of the physical sensations in your body and the thoughts that are going through your mind, is that you can also say to yourself, it's okay to feel this. No matter what this is, it's okay to feel this. So this is going to be one of your first practices, is to practice this. Practice saying to yourself, it's okay to feel this. And notice, what effect does that have on you? This is not designed to change your emotion necessarily. This is not designed to get rid of painful emotions. It is designed to alleviate your suffering. So try it. Let me know how it works for you. The important things to remember about mindfulness of current emotions is that you are not your emotion. You're experiencing your emotion, but you are not your emotion. And the other thing to remember, which I think is so important, especially when we're experiencing intense distress, is that no emotion lasts forever. And in fact, even if you're experiencing a lot of distress right now and a lot of pain, you may look back at other times in your life when you experienced a lot of pain or suffering and maybe realize, oh, that experience that I've had before did not last forever, right? So it's okay to feel this. I'm not my emotion. No emotion lasts forever. Just notice what happens as you start to adopt these kinds of thoughts and adopt this practice. All right, that's one skill of the 3 skills of the day. The next skill is from the module of skills of emotion regulation. Now, emotion regulation is about changing your emotions and changing the associated behaviors with your emotions when you want to. That's critical. It has to be when you want to. There is a lot to teach about emotion regulation. And I told you I was going to teach you one skill, but actually the one skill has like 7 different skills in it. So I'm just going to focus on one thing. Again, I'm going to provide some resources at the end that will tell you about some other emotion regulation skills that are available to you. But the one skill that I'm going to be focusing on here in the next few minutes is a skill called ABC Please. The ABC Please skill is designed to help people reduce their vulnerability to painful and unpleasant emotions. We're probably all aware that there are circumstances or situations in which we're more vulnerable to feel unpleasant emotion. When you're in pain, when you're tired, when you're stressed, when you have had a number of negative things happen in a row. These are all events and circumstances that make us more vulnerable to experiencing another negative and painful emotion. So one of the ways in which we can become more regulated emotionally is to steadily work on reducing vulnerability. And in that way, we kind of shore up our defenses so that we're less vulnerable in negative emotions and we feel more competent and in control of our emotions. So this is the ABC Please skill. And I'm just going to say a few things about A, B, and please. I'm going to skip over the C for today and just focus on these. So, and give it very short shrift. So A is about doing something every day that is a positive experience. So lots of times we think that the trick to being happy in our lives is to just get rid of all the negative experiences in our lives. And if you can do that, that's amazing, but I don't think you can. I don't think it's been done before. Negative experiences are going to happen no matter what. So how do we become less vulnerable to negative experiences is when we have kind of pennies in the piggy bank, where the pennies in the piggy bank are positive experiences in our lives. So accumulating positives means doing something every day that gives you a sense of pleasure or joy, no matter how long it is, we can all do this. So even if you have so many things on your to-do list that you can hardly think straight, you could probably take 5 minutes to put on your favorite song and to dance around your living room, right? That's a short-term positive. But accumulating positive is also about longer term. What can I do today that helps me achieve a longer term positive outcome? And this is really important because I think sometimes we get so focused on things like self-care, where we say, oh, I have to take care of myself in this moment. And while that's true, we also sometimes have to keep our eyes on the prize. And so that means if my long-term positive goal is to get a degree in something that's meaningful to me, or to get a career or a job in an area that's meaningful to me, that might mean that today I need to study for this exam, right? So I'm studying for this exam, which is not a pleasant experience maybe, but it's to help me accumulate the positive experience in the long term. And to remind ourselves of that the reason why we're doing this stressful thing is so that we can get closer to our longer term goals. So you want to balance, you want to have short-term positives, things that give you a sense of joy and pleasure in this moment right now, but also work towards longer term positives. Related to that longer term positive is the B, which stands for building mastery. Building mastery is about doing something every day that gives you a sense of accomplishment, no matter how small. So this is like the trick of making yourself a to-do list. Maybe you already have a to-do list, and making sure that you do one thing on that list every day, or one part of one thing on that list every day. There's entire treatments, mental health treatments, that are built around this idea of building mastery as an antidote to depression, actually, a sense of accomplishment every single day. And if you don't have that, then figure out, what do I need to put on my to-do list that I can cross off at the end of the day that gives me that sense of accomplishment. So focus on building mastery. Again, as a way of reducing vulnerability to negative emotions and depression and stress. And then the please skills. Now, the please skills, I have to tell you, is a really clunky acronym. You could see it on the slide here, how the please is represented by the different elements of it. These are all things that you've heard about before, like you may have heard about HALT, hungry, angry, lonely, tired, I think that's right, or other kinds of acronyms that are about what sorts of things, if we don't attend to them, make us more vulnerable to feeling lousy. So these are all things that you know about, I am sure, that you have to work on balancing your eating, not eating too much or too little, not overly restricting, but also not allowing yourself to eat everything and anything, especially if you're eating foods that generally make you feel bad. Avoiding mood altering drugs, recognizing that even in the moment, while it might give you a spike of pleasure or relief, it actually ends up often causing more problems for you in the long term. Working on balancing your sleep, again, not sleeping too much or too little. Getting exercise every day. These are all things that I'm sure you all know are the sorts of things that if you did this, you would feel better in the long run. And it's really hard to figure out how to do this in a way that's sustainable to you. And what's great about this is that you can actually see how the please skills might map onto the accumulate positives and the build mastery skill. You could create for yourself a worksheet on, did I eat 3 meals and 2 snacks or so today? Did I eat mostly healthy foods today? Yes or no? Did I avoid mood altering drugs? Yes or no? Did I get good sleep? Yes or no? And did I exercise today, even if it's just for 15 minutes or even just 5 minutes? I'm doing that with intention and sustaining it. So this is not going to work just by doing it one day, of course, but sustaining it. All of this will over time reduce your vulnerabilities. Okay. So mindfulness of current emotions. When you're feeling unpleasant emotions in this moment, you could practice mindfulness of current emotions. And then more daily things that you could do to help yourself over the longer term are the ABC please skills. Okay. Third skill of the day is referred to as a crisis survival skill. Now, crisis can sound like a really strong or intense word. And maybe you relate to this word. Maybe you think that you experience lots of crises. Maybe you don't think that you experience crises, but you could then think that these skills are designed to help you get through really any kind of difficult situation. So crisis survival skills are how to get through difficult situations or crises without doing anything that might make the situation or your life worse. Okay, so we all probably sometimes do things in the middle of a crisis or a difficult situation that actually makes the situation worse. So for example, when I have a paper due or a test or a work assignment due, and rather than taking the steps towards doing any of those things, I crawl into bed and pull the covers over my head. That might feel good in the moment, though most of the time it actually feels not great. And it's making the crisis worse because when I get out of bed, I still have all that stuff to do. Or in the middle of a crisis, when you're in an argument with somebody or a really intense conversation, maybe you lash out at them, or maybe you just leave the situation, and actually those things, lashing out or leaving the situation, contributes to the relationship having more struggles rather than behaving more effectively in that situation. So we all probably have experience with making situations worse, and crisis survival strategies are designed to help you get through a situation without making it worse, okay? It's not designed necessarily to solve the problem. It's not designed to, radically change the world, but it is designed to help you get through really difficult moments. So the skill that I'm going to be focusing on then to help you with crisis survival is called the TIP skills. And the TIP skills, TIP, is about actually changing your body chemistry so that when we're in crisis, when we're experiencing a really intense and difficult moment, you are probably aware that your body is haywire. You are anxious, you are agitated, your heart is racing, you're tense all over. We might say your sympathetic nervous system is in overdrive. And when those moments hit, when you are, 90 or above on a scale of 0 to 100 in terms of emotional intensity, you need to do something to regulate or calm yourself down fast. And we say, like, if you're above a 90 on a 0 to 100 scale, how do you get yourself down enough, not down to 0, but down enough that you could think straight, that you could behave more effectively in the situation. So that's what the TIP skills, those are the situations that the TIP skills are designed for. And I'm going to just highlight the T, the temperature, and the P, the paced breathing, okay? So the temperature skill. If you have not heard of this before, you might think that this sounds ridiculous. And so I had to put here that it may be ridiculous what I'm about to teach you, but it is a well-known or increasingly more well-known strategy for reducing emotion intensity. And as evidence of that, here's a screenshot of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on Instagram practicing this. She doesn't call it the TIP skill, I don't think, but that's what it is. So what the TIP skill is, the temperature skill, is actually designed to trick your body into thinking that you have dived into cold water. And the reason why we want to trick our body into thinking that we have plunged ourselves into cold water is because humans, actually all mammals, have what is called a dive reflex. And the dive reflex is designed to keep us alive for longer in the context of very cold water, or sea, any mammal you can think of that has to exist in cold water has this dive reflex. And what it actually does is that it increases your parasympathetic nervous system. It rapidly lowers your heart rate, and preserves your energy. Okay, so what's fascinating about this is that if we can activate the dive reflex when we're feeling distressed by engaging in this exercise, we will notice that we could become quickly much more relaxed. Now, the caveat is this is not to be used if you have a heart condition or you take beta blocker medication. You should talk to a doctor before you use that. But for everybody else, this is an amazing skill. So what you do, it's a little bit hard for me to demonstrate over Zoom, and I admit that I don't actually have cold water in this bowl, but I will tell you that what you need is a bowl, and it has to be a big enough bowl to actually fit your face. And you would fill up this bowl with ice water. So water and some ice. It has to be very cold. Now, how you trick yourself into thinking that you're diving is to cover a particular part of your face in the water. And that area of the face that you want to cover are your eyes and your temples. That's what's needed to trick your brain into thinking that your whole body is underwater. It actually doesn't matter if the rest of your body is or isn't underwater, as long as this part is underwater. But the other way in which you want to trick your body is to hold your breath, because that's what you would be doing if you were underwater, and to have your head be lower than your heart. So what you want to do is take the bowl. AOC isn't doing it exactly. No, she is actually, because you take the bowl and you put it on a table that's low down in front of you, or you sit and you put the bowl on your knees, and then you plunge your face, hold your breath, plunge your face into the water and hold it there for as long as you can. Aim for about 20 seconds. And just notice, this is going to be amazing. And for many people, we have heard that this sort of transforms their experience, because you could rate your distress before and after you do it and just notice what happens. If you happen to wear a smartwatch that monitors your heart rate, you could look at what your heart rate is before and after you do it and collect data, see if it actually works for you. And again, I would love to hear your experiences with this. So try the tea when you're experiencing really heightened distress, above a 90, see what happens. That requires some props, and sometimes we don't have props, and we may not be able to get a bowl quickly or have ice water. And so I want to teach you one last skill that's part of the tip skills, which is called paced breathing. And the nice thing about paced breathing is that you don't need any props. You can do it anywhere. So if you're in a classroom, if you're in a work meeting, if you're in the middle of a fight with somebody, you could actually do the paced breathing. So now we often hear that when we're stressed, people say, take a deep breath. And while that makes sense intuitively, what taking a deep breath does sometimes is has people focus on their inhale and also focus on their chest breathing, both of which actually increase are more likely to increase agitation rather than to decrease it. So paced breathing is a little bit different, because what paced breathing is, it's telling you to breathe from your belly or your diaphragm area. Slow your breathing down. And the critical piece here is to make your exhalation longer than your inhalation. So what I want us all to do now for a couple of minutes, we're going to do this together, where generally, everybody's rhythm is going to be a little bit different. But if in general, you could aim for having one breath cycle be about 10 seconds, you're thinking about inhaling for about 4 seconds and exhaling for about 6 seconds. So do it with me now. I'm going to count for us. Okay, so take a deep breath in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Inhale. 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So maybe you noticed that that pace didn't feel right to you. It felt too slow or too fast. That's okay. Experiment with what a good pace is for you based on how your, breathing cycle works. But keep these points here is important, especially that third point about making your exhalation longer than your inhalation. And again, this is one of those skills that you can monitor your heart rate before or after, or rate your level of distress. When you practice paced breathing, try to practice it for at least 3 to 5 minutes and notice what effect that has on you. And let me know how it goes. Okay, so mindfulness of current emotion. ABC please skills, and the two of the 4 tip skills. I just crammed these skills down your throat in about 35 minutes. I hope it gave you something tangible that you could use going forward. And I hope that it also piques your interest in maybe learning about some other skills or resources that are available. So I just want to highlight a couple of things that actually in the middle of COVID last year ago, my team got some funding from Rutgers, which is amazing. Thank you, Rutgers, to do a study using DBT skills. And as part of the funding for that study, we developed animated skills videos that teach 14 DBT skills. You could find them on our YouTube page, youtube.com/DBTRU. Mindfulness of current emotions is there, the tip skills are there, and the please skills, and then a bunch of other skills are there. So please go check them out. You can also follow me on Twitter, where anytime we have new videos come out, I will post there so that you could see that. And then as part of Chancellor-Provost Conway's initiatives, there is just a wealth of resources available to both students and faculty and staff. And these say coronavirus in the title, but actually these are resources that are available always. And also, I wish I, now that I think about it, had the newer link, because the Chancellor's office has put together a link for Mental Health Awareness Week that has even more resources available, including other videos that you might find really useful, and other experiences and activities that are happening this week. So that's my time. Can't believe it. I ended right on time. I thank you all so much for coming. I hope this was helpful and that you learned something, and I wish you the best.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rizvi. This was excellent, and really appreciate the resources. I will certainly be taking you up on that challenge. All right, well, thank you so much. Please, you can always write to my email, NB Chancellor-Provost@rutgers.edu. And we look forward to spending the week with you as we focus on wellness. Thank you so much, Dr. Rizvi.
Thank you.
Okay, goodbye, everyone.